World War I was a pivotal moment in human history, shaping the world as we know it today. From bizarre battlefield tactics to unbelievable human stories, get ready to be astounded by the unbelievable tales from the front lines and behind the scenes of this epic conflict. Grab your helmets and gas masks and let's get started. 1. The Great War. World War I was the biggest and one of the deadliest conflicts the world had ever seen at the time. No less than 65 million soldiers fought in the war, with more than 17 million people killed and 20 million wounded. Reason why it was known as the Great War. In 1914, H.G. Wells coined the expression, "the war to end all wars," but in the end, it only planted the seeds for an even greater and more destructive conflict 2 decades later. 2. Animals on the front lines. It is estimated over 16 million animals served in the First World War. They were used for transport, communication, and companionship. Horses, donkeys, mules, and camels carried food, water, ammunition, and medical supplies to men at the front, and dogs and pigeons carried messages. Some animals even became heroes and mascots of their units. Cher Ami, the pigeon, became famous for saving thousands of soldiers in the Lost Battalion in 1918 by delivering a message despite being seriously wounded. Cher Ami was awarded the French Croix de Guerre for bravery. Another episode of a hero animal is Sergeant Stubby the dog, who served for 18 months and participated in 17 battles on the Western Front. He saved his regiment from surprise mustard gas attacks, found and comforted the wounded, and many other important events. Stubby has been called the most decorated war dog of the Great War and the only dog to be nominated and promoted to sergeant through combat. 3. Gavrilo Prin. A Bosnian Serb nationalist named Gavrilo Prin is forever etched in history for his pivotal role in the outbreak of World War I. On June 28, 1914, this young member of the Black Hand secret society assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary and his wife Sophie during their visit to Sarajevo. Princip's act of violence was a culmination of simmering tensions in Europe, where nationalism, militarism, and a complex web of alliances had created a powder keg. Princip was spared the death penalty because of his age, 19, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He died on the 28th of April 1918 from tuberculosis exacerbated by poor prison conditions. In some sense, we can argue this 19-year-old kid caused the death of over 80 million people over the span of 2 world wars. 4. Famous figures. Both Walt Disney and Ernest Hemingway served as ambulance drivers during World War I. Many other famous figures also served during the war, including Erwin Schrödinger, Robert Graves, and Edwin Hubble, although he never saw combat. 5. The first use of tanks. In response to the stalemate that developed on the Western Front, tanks began to emerge in the battlefield. Although vehicles that incorporated the basic principles of the tank, armor, firepower, and all-terrain mobility had been projected in the decade or so before the war, it was the alarmingly heavy casualties of the start of its trench warfare that stimulated development. In Great Britain, an initial vehicle nicknamed Little Willie was constructed during August and September 1915, but it wasn't until the Battle of the Somme in September 1916 that the first offensive using tanks took place. These early tanks were slow, unreliable, and often broke down, but they marked the beginning of armored warfare and had a profound impact on future military tactics. 6. The Harlem Hellfighters. The 369th Infantry Regiment, composed mostly of African American soldiers, served on the front lines longer than any other American unit and earned a unit-wide Croix de Guerre from the French government for their bravery. Before its establishment, any African American who wanted to fight in the war had to enlist in the French or Canadian Army. They went on to serve more than 20 years later in World War II. 7. Trench warfare and ghosts. Trench warfare in World War I epitomized the grim and protracted nature of the conflict on the Western Front. Stretching for hundreds of miles, these intricate networks of muddy, waterlogged trenches became the haunting symbol of a war marked by brutality and attrition. Soldiers endured unspeakable conditions from rats and disease, artillery bombardments, gas attacks, snipers, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. It was a true horror. In these conditions, some soldiers in the trenches reported strange phenomena referred to as trench ghosts. These eerie experiences, often attributed to the stress and horrors of war, contributed to the psychological toll on troops. 8. Christmas Truce of 1914. In the midst of trench warfare, soldiers from opposing sides on the Western Front called the temporary ceasefire during Christmas. They exchanged gifts, sang carols, and even played soccer in no man's land, showcasing a brief moment of humanity amidst the conflict. This happened just 5 months after the start of the war. 9. The Red Baron. Manfred von Richthofen, known as the Red Baron, is considered the ace of aces of the war, being officially credited with 80 air combat victories. His distinctive red Fokker triplane made him a legend in aviation history. On April 21, 1918, he was shot down and killed by a Canadian pilot, Captain Arthur Roy Brown. 10. Battle of the Somme. One of the most devastating and deadliest battles of World War I was the Battle of the Somme, which raged on the Western Front from July 1 to November 18, 1916. It was a joint British and French offensive against the German forces, aimed at breaking the trench deadlock. The battle witnessed horrific casualties, with an estimated 1 million soldiers killed, wounded, or missing on all sides. The first day of the battle, July 1, 1916, stands out as one of the bloodiest in military history, with the British suffering nearly 60,000 casualties. Prolonged artillery bombardments, barbed wire, and machine gun nests made advances exceedingly difficult. The Battle of the Somme became a symbol of the brutality and futility of trench warfare, leaving a lasting impact on the collective memory of the war and underscoring the staggering human cost of the conflict. 11. The birth of plastic surgery. The birth of plastic surgery as a distinct medical specialty can be traced back to the crucible of World War I. This global conflict witnessed a horrific surge in facial injuries and disfigurements among soldiers, primarily due to the devastating weaponry used in trench warfare. Surgeons like Sir Harold Gillies, working tirelessly in the midst of the chaos, pioneered groundbreaking techniques for facial reconstruction and wound repair. Their innovative approaches, including skin grafts, tissue flaps, and tubed pedicle grafts, revolutionized the field of medicine. Not only did these advancements offer hope to countless wounded soldiers by restoring their physical appearances and functions, but they also laid the foundation for the modern practice of plastic surgery. 12. Winston Churchill. At the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Winston Churchill held the position of First Lord of the Admiralty in the British government, making him responsible for the operations of the Royal Navy. A year later, he advocated for the Gallipoli campaign, an ambitious plan to force the Dardanelles Strait, which would have allowed Allied forces to threaten the Ottoman Empire. The campaign resulted in heavy casualties and ultimately failed. Following this episode, Churchill resigned from his position and volunteered to serve as an officer on the Western Front, where he was appointed as a lieutenant colonel in the Royal Scots Fusiliers. He saw action in the trenches and gained valuable first-hand experience of the challenges faced by the soldiers. These actions and experiences were incredibly valuable in his formation and the essential role he played during World War II, defeating Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. Winston Churchill became one of the most iconic figures of the 20th century. 13. Gallipoli and the Emu War. During World War I, Australian and New Zealand forces were involved in the ill-fated Gallipoli campaign. After the war, Australia faced an unexpected adversary, a large population of emus. In 1932, there was a brief but bizarre conflict known as the Emu War, when the Australian government deployed soldiers armed with machine guns to deal with an emu population explosion. While a number of the birds were killed, the emu population persisted and continued to cause crop destruction. 14. The Lost Battalion. During the Meuse-Argonne offensive in October 1918, the 77th Division of the American Expeditionary Forces, under the command of Major Charles W. Whittlesey, found itself isolated deep within the Argonne forest behind enemy lines. Surrounded by German forces and cut off from their fellow American units, Whittlesey and his men endured nearly a week of relentless attacks, artillery fire, and dwindling supplies. Despite being trapped and outnumbered, they held their ground tenaciously, refusing to surrender. Finally, on October 7th, after receiving much-needed supplies and reinforcements, the Lost Battalion fought their way out of their dire situation, leaving a legacy of courage and determination that endures as a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity. 15. The Dazzle Camouflage. Dazzle Camouflage in World War I was a visually striking and innovative approach to naval warfare. Developed by artists and designers, this unconventional form of camouflage aimed not to conceal ships, but to confuse and deceive enemy submarine commanders. Ships were painted in bold, high-contrast patterns of geometric shapes and irregular lines, making it challenging for U-boat commanders to determine the ship's speed, direction, and size. The belief was that by breaking up the visual silhouettes of the vessel, enemy submarines would struggle to accurately target and torpedo their intended victims. Dazzle Camouflage was a testament to the creativity and adaptability of warfare during this period, as it added a layer of unpredictability to naval combat, even though its effectiveness remains a subject of debate. Unfortunately, the last surviving veterans of World War I have all passed away, as the last known veterans died in the years leading up to the centenary of the war's outbreak in 2014. Florence Green was the last known surviving veteran of World War I from the United Kingdom. She served as a mess steward in the Women's Royal Air Force, WRAF, and passed away in 2012, just a few weeks short of her 111th birthday. Claude Choles, an English-born Australian, served in the Royal Navy and was the last combat veteran of World War I. He passed away in 2011 at the age of 110. The last known American veteran, Frank Buckles, also died in 2011 at 110. These lesser-known facts add depth to our understanding of World War I and highlight the unusual, intriguing, and often overlooked aspects of this historic conflict. But it doesn't end here. There are still many other unexplored aspects and stories from the Great War. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want us to create another episode. Thanks for watching.